Oh, I'm sorry. You need this. Duh.
How's that? Is that okay? All right. Now, I'm not going to call anybody out, but I kind of want to read round robin today, so if you actually brought a Bible or a device with the Bible on it, can you nod your head for me? Not everybody. Okay. So we're going to do the backup plan. Everybody has a hymnal, right? Okay. So if you flip to the back, there's a bunch of scriptures back there, and it just so happens that my main starter text here is one of those. So we're going to do this. 8:34. This is in Matthew chapter 5. Okay. So you know how these things work. We're just going to do the first half of it. All right. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. He began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And we're going to stop it there. I know I did it backwards, but that's where I wanted to stop, so it worked out. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. The Beatitudes are what that long passage is usually called. And it's actually a short part of a great big long sermon. And people disagree as to whether or not Jesus preached the sermon all at once, or if it's a bunch of, kind of like a compilation of a bunch of different sermons all together. I don't really think that matters all that much to me. The point is, Jesus said it. That's the point to me. And it tells us the dues of Christianity. A lot of people today, I mean, we're talking national survey level, lots of people today, don't become Christians or don't become practicing Christians. And when asked why, one of their top reasons is because conservative Christians in particular focus on the don'ts of the faith. Don't do this, don't do that. You're doing this wrong. Do it this way instead. But mostly don't. But they say if Christians actually did the dues of the faith, more people would be interested in becoming saved. At least that's what the unbelievers say. God knows their hearts and whether or not that's true, but that's what they say. And there are a lot of dues to Christianity. When I was a Sunday school teacher, I taught all kinds of facts and scripture to my little kids in high school. That was one thing that was really important to me. I taught them the 10 Commandments. I taught them whole Psalms. I taught them big, long, complicated King James Bible verses. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. Taught them all of that kind of thing. But it never once occurred to me, ever, not one time, to teach the Beatitudes. And I'm really sad about that. I regret that. It never occurred to me to teach the Beatitudes. And there are a bunch of them, but today we're only going to hit one of them. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And you'd think, oh, well, Lindsay, why in the world would you focus on that? That's just like nothing. It's a lot of things. And there are peacemakers all over Scripture, including Jesus, and we'll get to him near the end. What is a peacemaker? Anybody know? Resolving conflict. That's one idea. Preserving unity. Ooh, that's new. I hadn't seen that one anywhere. That's nice. And I did. I researched this out for like a month. Anybody else have any thoughts on what is a peacemaker? Restoring peace. One thing I like about all of these things are that they're active. Do you see that? They're active. So, according to Webster, a person who brings about peace, especially by reconciling adversaries. That means if you're a peacemaker and there's trouble brewing, you can't hide your head in the sand, right? Because that's not actually making peace. It's an active role. And those who are children of God are peacemakers, right? Are we children of God? So what are we called to be? Now, how does this actually look in real life? I'd like, if you have your Bible and you want to turn there, flip all the way back to 1 Samuel chapter 25. And I'm going to read a chunk of this, quite a chunk. 1 Samuel chapter 25. We're going to learn about an interesting little family here that you've probably heard before, most of you, but it's cool. And not everybody thinks of this as a peacemaking story. So the context for this is that David is on the run. And he's on the run from Saul, and his forces are growing. He's up to at least 600 people now that are following him, 600 men, like fighting dudes following him. So he's got a chunk of guys, but he's not ready to rival the king yet. He's not that big. He's still on the run. He'll get there. A couple chapters later, the tide's going to turn for David, but not yet. So in 1 Samuel chapter 25, that's the situation. So we're going to start in verse 2. David moved down to the desert of Maon. A certain man in Maon, who had property there at Carmel, was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband, a Calebite, was surly and mean in his dealings. Okay, now I'm going to skip reading through the whole next part, then just explain it out to you later. But basically what happens is that David sends some men, after he does a good deed, he sends some men to Nabal and says, very politely, "Hi, we could use some hospitality. We've been really nice to you and helped you out. So is there anything that we might get out of the deal? Maybe, possibly. Little hospitality, please." Now let's say what Nabal answers, right? So when David's men arrived, they gave Nabal the message in David's name. Then they waited. Verse 10. So after they've waited, Nabal makes them hang out and wait for a while. Nabal answers David's servants, "Who is this David? Who is the son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat that I have slaughtered for my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where?" I cannot communicate adequately what a huge insult this is. David is not a nobody. Before this, he was an important officer in the king's army. Very important dude. Everybody knew about him. There were parades / street party deals going on where everybody was singing his praises. He is not a nobody. So there's a start right there. Second, in the culture of the time, I don't care if you are a nobody street rat. It's shearing time. It is a time of great prosperity, and you are going to get something out of the deal if you show up, just out of general hospitality, even if you're a nobody. So David's guys are being treated worse than nothing. Okay. So, verse 12, David's men turned around and went back, and when they arrived, they reported every word. I cannot imagine them being very happy. David said to his men, "Put on your swords." So David's getting angry. He's very insulted, right? Put on your swords. So they put on their swords, and David put on his, and about 400 men went up with David, while 200 stayed with the supplies. So what's about to happen? What's about to happen? Confrontation, war. Remember, he's kind of already on the war path. One thing that we don't like to think about very often, but it was very common back in the day, is if you are at war, you just kind of take whatever happens to be handy and don't ask. He didn't do that. He did something really nice for Nabal and made sure that nothing got stolen. He kept everything safe. He acted as shepherd rather than as conqueror. And this is how he's treated. He could have just gone in and taken it from the get-go. He's got 600 dudes. And he chose not to and was treated this way. In fact, he didn't just choose not to, he chose to help. Okay, verse 14. One of the servants told Nabal's wife, Abigail, enter amazing help right here. By the way, that word, this is just a fun side note that is important to me as a female. And I'm not even married, but it's important. In Genesis, when Eve is called a help, that is a very strong word. It is not, oh, I'm your little helper helping along, that's me. Here's your shoes, here's your dinner, here's your coat. It's not like that at all. It's a very powerful word that means she is his very present help in times of trouble. She is a help when no one else can help. It's very important, and it's cool. Like, if you're a girl, you get to be that. You get to be like this, like what Abigail's just going to do if you're married. If I was like, that's just a thing. It's amazing to me to see wives who are very present helps to their husband. It's cool. When nobody else can do it, they step up and do it and save his rear end. So, spoiler alert. David sent messengers from the desert to give our master his greetings. One of the servants is talking to Abigail. But he hurled insults at them. Yet these men were very good to us. They did not mistreat us, and the whole time we were out in the fields near them, nothing was missing. Night and day, they were a wall around us. All the time we were herding our sheep near them. Now think it over and see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. He's such a wicked man, no one can talk to him. I wonder how many times before this story Abigail has saved her husband. Because the servants know exactly who to talk to. They know exactly who to go to, exactly where they might find the help that they need. I wonder how many times she's already saved him that we just don't know about. All right. Abigail lost no time. So first off, she listened to them. Did Nabal listen? No. Okay. But she listened, and she listened to the whole thing. It's harvest time, basically. It's sheep shearing time. There's 50 million things going on. She might have 10 different things in her head. But when her servant, who is beneath her, comes to her, they have her undivided attention. She listens to the whole problem. What if she had just said, David sent messengers from the desert to give our master his greetings, and that's all she really listened to? And then she's just like, okay, great, whatever, and goes about her day. She could not have done her job, could she? She had to stop and listen to the whole situation. Abigail lost no time, verse 18. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, that means they're all ready to be cooked, 5 seahs, and I looked that up, that's like 60 pounds, I think it is, of roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins, and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them on donkeys. This is food that is really good food, and it's a lot of really good food. This is food for an important person and his entourage. This is not, here's your leftover meatloaf sandwich, even though those are tasty. That's not what this is. Then she told her servants, go on ahead, I'll follow you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal. As she came riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, there were David and his men descending towards her. And what's on their mind? Yeah, war. He's going to get what he deserves. We are really angry with Nabal, and his whole household is going to get it. And he's got a big household. Remember, he's a rich dude. Okay. David had just said, verse 21, "It's been useless, all my watching over this fellow's property in the desert so that nothing of his was missing. He paid me back evil for good. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him." That's where David's at right now. And one can argue that David is not being a peacemaker at the moment, and you would be right. But let's just leave that be. And, he's a ticked off soldier. Okay? He's been humiliated. Let's stop with that for a moment. He came in humility and in meekness, not as a conquering, soon-to-be king, but as a shepherd. And he was treated like dirt. Sometimes that happens, doesn't it? When we're strong, but we do so quietly with dignity and humility, sometimes we get treated like dirt. All right. Verse 23, when Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed down before David with her face to the ground. This is not idol worship. This is a cultural sign of very deep respect. Very deep respect. She fell at his feet and said, "My Lord, let the blame be on me alone." Is any of this actually her fault? "Please let your servant speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say." She is the wife of an extremely wealthy dude, and she's calling herself a servant. His servant. "May my Lord," that's like master, right? Servant-master situation. "Pay no attention to that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name is Fool, and folly goes with him. But as for me, your servant, I did not see the men my master sent." I would not have let this happen if I had known. My husband is a wreck. If I had known, it would not have been like this. And you can say, well, she's bad-mouthing her husband. She's being honest. She's not afraid to be honest when it's necessary. And she's not telling him anything he doesn't already know, is she? Okay. "I did not see the men my master sent. Now since the Lord has kept you, my master, from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, may your enemies and all who intend to harm my master be like Nabal." She's blessing him, isn't she? He's coming with swords to kill her husband and all the other guys at the household and probably take all their stuff, and she's blessing him. "Let this gift, which your servant has brought to my master, be given to the men who follow you. Please forgive your servant's offense, for the Lord will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my master, because he fights the Lord's battles. Let no wrongdoing be found in you as long as you live. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my master will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. When the Lord has done for my master every good thing he promised concerning him, and has appointed him leader over Israel, my master will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. And when the Lord has brought my master success, remember your servant." So notice how she flips a little tiny bit here, starting in verse 30, 31-ish. 31, "My master will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself." So she's not afraid of saying in a polite way, in a peacemaking way, you're about to do something wrong too. Don't do this. This is not God's will. But she does it in a very peacemaking way, very humbly, with meekness. She has strength and generosity in her, but she's coming very humbly and meekly to him. But at the same time, she's not afraid to use strong words about her husband or about David or about what God's blessing will be on David. She's got the Lord on her side. So people who say peacemakers are weak are wrong. It's hard to be a peacemaker. It's hard to find this way of reconciling people who are at odds. And she does it. David says to Abigail, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. Otherwise, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has kept me from harming you, if you had not come quickly to meet me, not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak." Then David accepted from her hand what she had brought him and said, "Go home in peace. I have heard your words and granted your request." Now, for sake of time, I'm not going to read the rest, but what happens is just like less than 2 weeks later, Nabal's dead. God avenges for them. David doesn't have to do it because God does it. And Abigail ends up becoming one of David's wives. So, this is peacemaking. This is hard. And she does an amazing job. So what are application points that we can get to, or should I even go there yet? Yeah, I guess I should. It's time for application. All right. A little whiteboard time. So this is where the story is, in case you want to find it later. And here's Abigail and Nahum, or Nabu, whatever his weird name is. How are they different? How is the peacemaker? Oh, sorry. How is the peacemaker different from someone who is worldly? Mm-hmm. You're right. For the sake of time, I'm going to go with my pre-made 4 points because we're running short on time. But you're right. So, Abigail listens. Her husband rejects. He doesn't listen to people. And she listens with all of herself. I've been surprised lately how much just listening can be a peacemaking person. Abigail is also generous, and I'm going to get the spelling wrong, but that's okay. Nabal is the opposite of generous. He's all about himself. I'm going to make it even stronger than that and say full of self. He only cares about him. Self-centered, yes. I like that one better. We're going to do that. Mm-hmm. A protection racket?
Yeah, they're protecting the shares and things like that. They didn't go in and make a business deal.
I understand that.
They protected them first, and then they went in and said, well, man, you kind of owe us kindness, and you owe us something.
Okay. That is an excellent point. Let me get through my 4 things here and I will address it because you're looking at it from a different culture. Cultural things are what's influencing that. Okay. Mm-hmm. He's proud. He's very proud of his 3,000 sheep shearing and all of his stuff. She is meek. And I'm going to write out quiet strength. Dignity. And she is clothed in humility, a lot of humility. And remember, she is the wife of a very rich man. She wouldn't have to be that way, and she's choosing it.
She's brave, too.
She's very brave.
Yeah, because she's up against a king.
She's a strong woman. Well, he's not a king yet, but he's a warrior for sure. And he's anointed king. He's going to be.
She's in survival mode.
That's very
She's also following God. A lot of people will want peace at any cost at all. And as Christians, we can't quite do that, can we? We still have to be following God. Peace, yep, peace that God gives. Whereas Nabal is full of human nature. That's what he's following, isn't he? His own sin nature. When I went to deliver the little posters that the kids made for VBS, I got kind of upset. And I shouldn't have, but I did. Because when I went to a lot of those places, not a lot, but 2 of them, I felt like I was being treated like a criminal. And I wasn't, but it felt like that. Because you go in to like the police office, and there's this big thing and a little speaker, and they're talking to you through this thick plasticky glass, and you just feel like a criminal. And I couldn't even give them the poster. I had to put the poster in this little box and shut the door, and then the girl on the other side of the door has to take the poster out. Our whole world is set up for Nabal. Our whole world is set up for this kind of person. But we are not of this world. We are the children of God. We are the opposite. We are called out of the world to be the peacemakers. That is what we get to do. Jesus is our perfect example of this. But I want to address what you said at the end, so don't let me forget. Jesus, and I won't turn there for sake of time, but do you remember when he was standing in front of Pilate? And Pilate's like, defend yourself. What did he say? My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom is of this world, then would my servants fight. He submitted himself unto human authority. And submission isn't a word that we like very much. And I even have trouble sometimes because usually people talk about it in relation to wives, and I'm sitting here thinking, so you're going to give a sermon that applies to like 20% of the congregation. What's in this for all the dudes and all the unmarried people? But really, submission is for every Christian. Every single Christian. We submit ourselves one to another, and according to what Peter says, we submit ourselves to earthly authority as well. We submit ourselves to our kings and our earthly authority. And right now, I'm grieving over a decision that happened yesterday, and I think some of you probably are too. But we are not of this world. And we are called to be a light and a peacemaker to those who are of this world, so that more people can move from being like Nabal to being like Abigail. And that doesn't mean that I didn't vote yesterday. Of course I went out and voted. I'm a citizen of the U.S., and I'm going to be that. But my higher calling and my true identity is as a child of God. That is where we can rest and have our hope and our peace. So if Jesus can stand before Pilate and not rain down fire from heaven, maybe we can work a little harder at being peacemakers. All right, that's what I've got. But to address your point, and I know you're all hungry and I'll let you go real soon, but this is a good point. It looks like he's running a profiteering racket, right? I'll protect you and then you give me all your good stuff. But in the culture of the day, anybody who happens along gets something, especially on a feast day when you've got all kinds of things, right? But he didn't just happen along and ask for a handout like anybody else would, because it's not in that culture thought of as just a handout. It's thought of as hospitality. Oh, you're here at supper time. Here, have some pot roast. That's just what they did, right? So he hasn't just done that. He's joined the working crew, in a sense, and has his guys all protecting those flocks. Because what did David do when he was a kid? He knows about this. He knows that generally speaking, you're going to lose some sheep during this time of the year. And he made sure not a single sheep got lost. He's coming not as somebody who is a mighty warrior who can just come in and take half the herd if he wants to, because he could have. But he's coming as somebody who's going to be a servant. And that's what he's telling Nabal. I have come to you as a servant. I have come in meekness and humility, and I am submitting myself to your hospitality just as one human being to another, and gets treated worse than a dog. Does that help?
Well, yeah, I think even in our culture, what you said before, about being Christ-like and being, even if you are mistreated, you forgive, and you be the peacemaker. You know, that's kind of hard to swallow sometimes. But she did that, even in our culture. That's why I said she was in survival mode, too. You do what you need to do. I mean,
She thought quickly. Scripture says that. She did not lose any time.
she was going to get slaughtered if she didn't do something.
Well, at least all the guys would be, and she would have been a prisoner. Yeah. But she's amazing. All right, we've gone over, so I'm going to hand it back to you.